Climate change, a global crisis where thousands of people all over the world fight against. A fight against their own people. A fight to make people aware of what's happening to the environment. A fight against the eradication of humankind. Institute of Town Planners Sri Lanka and Green Building Council Sri Lanka, in technical collaboration with Glide Private Limited and Design Advocacy Private Limited, presents the Conference on Value Creation Through Green. The 25th of January 2014 at BMICH from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Good morning to you all. It's a big pleasure to be here in Colombo, in Sri Lanka, your beautiful island. Thanks to the Green Building Council of Sri Lanka and to Glide for inviting me to give a presentation here. I look forward to give my presentation, to listen to the other presentations, and to discuss with you all on this important aspect of green buildings. The topic of my presentation is high-performance buildings in the tropical climate. I've been working, as mentioned, in Malaysia for 12 years, trying to understand how to make energy-efficient, high-performance building in this climate. I've been working with Gregers Ryman, who made the keynote presentation yesterday, and who has now taken over the role of being managing director of the company that we founded back in 2006. So we have many environmental challenges and opportunities in the 21st century. Energy sustainability is one of them. We have to reduce our use of fossil fuels to reduce global warming, and also because we are running out of fossil fuels. Renewable energies are available aplenty, especially in the tropics. Water sustainability, we have a lot of water generally here. Waste, we have to reduce our use, our deposition of a lot of waste to dump sites. We have to recycle. And finally, obviously, food for the world's population, a fastly growing population. Again, here in the tropics, we are favored with the best conditions for producing food. We can produce more food than what we need here. So the tropical hot and humid area has the best chances to develop a sustainable community in balance with nature. Needless to say, we are not there by far, but we have the best conditions here. I come from a cold country up north, Denmark, where we can't grow anything for half of the year. It's cold, it's dark, we hardly see the sun. It's obviously much more favorable in these parts. Global warming, I don't need to remind you of all the problems of the polar ice is melting, sea level is rising. We're seeing severe changes in the climate, severe heat waves, hurricanes, etc. And that is, I would say, 99% of scientists in the world believe that is due to our emissions of CO2 and other greenhouse gases. This is the CO2 content increase over the last 1,000 years, and we can see that basically it starts with around year 1800, where the so-called Industrial Revolution started in Europe, US, Japan. We started using coal, later on oil, natural gas, but coal and oil is obviously the big culprit, and we see the CO2 emissions skyrocketing. Now let's turn to buildings. Buildings are responsible for around 1/3 of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. You could say it's the biggest single emitter. So fortunately, reduction of energy consumption in buildings is relatively easy, contrary to maybe transport, contrary to airplanes and so on. Buildings, it's easy, relatively. And it's not expensive. What is expensive is not building an energy-efficient building, which I'm sure that you heard. I know you heard a presentation by Gregers Ryman yesterday on that very topic. So green buildings or energy efficient buildings are not expensive. It's the not doing it that is expensive. Here is a graph from my first home country, Denmark, where we see already back in 1961 we started with a building code that demanded for energy efficiency in buildings. And you can see the development here in the maximum requirement or the maximum allowed energy consumption measured in kilowatt hours per meter square per year. See how it develops throughout the decades, 2010, 15, 20. Now we're living under the 2010 building code, but already in that building code it's stated how 2015 and 2020 will be, and many companies, industries and clients are already asking for the new building code to be applied. They might as well. We're going towards zero energy buildings, and that's not just Denmark, that's the whole of Europe. By year 2020, all European countries, all the member states of the European Union, they have to implement a building code that calls for what we call near zero energy buildings, but we are down around 20 kilowatt hours per meter square per year. That is very ambitious, but it can happen. Now here in tropics, what I learned working in Malaysia for 12 years was that if you want to make zero energy buildings, it's even easier in the tropics because we have a much more favorable climate. I'll get back to that. Now, a zero energy building produces as much energy as it consumes on an annual basis. We could also call it a zero carbon building. So here's the building. And just to make the definition clear, so we've got a building that uses electricity, but also that produces electricity. Got our power plants somewhere in the vicinity or away, but connected obviously with the electric grid. The power plants emit CO2. The worse the fuel, the worse the CO2 emissions. Coal is obviously the worst. And a zero carbon building produces as much solar electricity to the grid as it uses from the grid, typically measured on an annual basis. When you have an electric grid, it doesn't really make sense to install batteries to be able to be self-sufficient. It's much better to use the grid as your battery, so when there is a surplus, you export to the grid, and when there is you need more electricity than you produce, typically nighttime, you import from the grid. And normally, the grid will be, so to say, very happy with that because solar electricity is being produced at the time of the day. When there is most need of electricity, during nighttime there is typically a surplus. So the grid is a very good storage system. So the building will produce as much as it consumes. Here's another illustration of the simple concept of net zero energy building, net zero energy on an annual basis typically. On the x-axis you will see that we obviously have to push for energy efficiency as much as possible. And then on the y-axis we have to supplement with renewable energy so that we get to a zero energy consumption, so that we consume no more than what we produce. Zero energy buildings in the tropics. Here's the advantages as we see them. There is an abundant daylight available during daytime throughout the year. It's always out there. From, well, here in Sri Lanka from 5:30, I think, in the morning. It was very early. I arrived at 2 o'clock. But fortunately, there was very solid blinds in my room, so I only saw a glimpse of it. But there was daylight out there all day, every day, throughout the year. The temperature difference from inside to outside is low. We don't need to have heavily insulated walls. Roofs is a little bit different. I'll get back to that. But it's generally a mild climate. And there's abundant solar radiation throughout the year for renewable energy systems. Here's the challenges. Facades need to be designed to control glare and heat radiation into the building. Because if you don't do that, then blinds will cover the windows and no daylight will enter, but heat will still come in there. So that's obviously not the right situation, but that is the way buildings typically are being designed in large cities in the tropics today.
All of you have long life, right? That's the Sri Lankan way of blessing. I'm starting with my topic for the day, green Sri Lankan case studies. Okay, because of the time constraint, I'm going to rush through this one. Actually, if I'm talking about Sri Lankan green rating system, there are 8 aspects that we are concerning about. When in the previous presentation, some of these aspects were mentioned, namely management, sustainable sites, water efficiency, energy and atmosphere, material and resources, environmental quality, innovation and design process, social and cultural awareness. Those are the main aspects that we consider. Right? Therefore, our approach for the design should be passive design and active solutions. We have to make a passive building, we are trouble-free building, right, at the time of designing, and we have to go for active solutions. Active solutions should be, again, less energy consumption and not what is called compromising the comfort of the occupants. Energy and atmosphere, if I am to take some of the examples, this well-known building in Sri Lanka called WTC, World Trade Center. Right? If you consider the monthly electricity bill of this building, it's 42 million per month. It's 42 million per month. If you consider this premises, BMICH, monthly electricity bill is 4 million per month. Right? If you take Sri Lanka Parliament, it's about 4 million per month. Right? Energy cost means energy consumption. Right? We are going to face a huge energy crisis within this year, of course. Right? Therefore, this building, right, it's a gold-rated building now, right, under existing building category. It was reduced by 20 to 25%. That means 8 million saving per month. 8 million rupees saving per month. How? We'll discuss later, right, if the time permits. This building again, Hatta National Bank, and the person who has done the thing is here in the audience, Mr. Jayasundara. I'm glad to see him in the audience. And right, while thanking him, this is another platinum-rated building, of course. Right? Why this building was platinum-rated? This is the least energy-consuming bank in Sri Lanka. Right? Compared to all the banks, this is the least energy-consuming bank in Sri Lanka. Why? There are many features. Right? If I am to discuss solar energy, net metering, right, and energy consumption per square meter, even the least in Sri Lanka, right, compared to all the banks in Sri Lanka. Right? And this CCB building, which is going to be another gold-rated building, they are having solar power, and they have green facades, it's going to come, right? And many other features, right? And even you can reduce the heat island effect by having solar panels on top of the roof, as well as having a roof garden. This is mass sold in Thru, again platinum-rated building, the right-hand one, right? While having greenery on the top of the roof, you can cut down, right, the radiation heat, of course, radiation heat. And again, we can go for natural lighting. It's right, available in Sri Lankan context. We are having tropical climate. Every time we can get natural lighting. Right? The possibilities are again available. And we can go for lighting ducts. This is possible. This is around 6 o'clock. Right? You can see how lighting level is there. Right? This is a solar tube system. It's passive system of getting lights for a building, right? Even this building, it says Mihikata Madura. I can't see that sort of innovation here. I can't see that sort of innovation here at all here, right? It's just a glimpse, of course. These are gimmicks, right? Therefore, if you, for the other type of floors, right, if it is not the topmost floor, we can think of having light in ducts, which is going to be very much, what is called environmental friendly approach of getting natural light. Right, light in duct, it's multiple reflection. For about 5 meters, it's going to be very much suitable. Getting light in ducts. And this is one of the factories designed by me some time back, entirely natural lighting. You can see it's entirely natural lighting. It's a packing factory, of course. You can see here, cardboard manufacturing factory at what is called Bandaragama. And you can see entirely natural lighting. Right? It's triple height space, of course, entirely natural lighting. During the daytime, we are not using any light. Right? And this is Alia project, the elephant project, Dambulla, Again, you can see some of the areas, they are using natural light. Some of the areas they are using natural light very productively, but I think they could have used this one more productively, and we have given some suggestions, and they also have applied for the rating, and they are keep on improving their status now. Right? If you talk about the water efficiency, I put this figure here, because this person never washed his face for 37 years. Right? He haven't consumed any single water apart from drinking, not for any other functions. Right? This is there in the Yahoo website if you go log into the Yahoo, but that is not the conservation that we are expecting. Right? On average, Sri Lankan person consumes more than 120 liters per person per day, which is a massive consumption. We can reduce up to about 80 liters, which is possible. Again, I am talking about concepts. You can see the right-hand side Singapore, Skywalk. It's a theme park. It's a steel structure made to look like a tree, steel tube structure. But in the middle, there's a rainwater harvesting system. On your left-hand side, you can see mass holding, Thru, where they collect the rainwater at the top of the, right? You can see it's here, right? Actually, this is the rainwater collection tank, and you have the toilets underneath. Therefore, it's the medium of, there is no what is called electricity consumption for pumping the water. It is gravity. It's totally gravity. Right? No need for pumping. And the concepts how we can use actually. Right? And this is rainwater harvesting Ulugalla Resort, Anuradhapura. More than 40,000 liters they are collecting. It is very much sufficient for their consumption, rainwater harvesting. Even for the drinking they are using this one.
Good morning, friends and colleagues here. I have a bad throat because I think there's too much dust in the place where I live at the moment because there's a construction work going on this building. Hopefully it will be temporary. The headlines of saying that the tallest vertical garden itself is not an important factor because height of a building comes not because of you want to build the tallest structure in the world, but it has a lot to do with economics, where have been the problem of any building that we do. And I think I worked with Mr. Bawa in year 1990, 91, 92 to 94 on Kandalema Hotel. That was something that was unique. I think there are a few people here who have also worked with us at that time. And if you ask them, any of them, they said we had a great time, but definitely I'm not going to repeat it. Right. And this building got inspired by that. I have 3 sons, who are 2 of them architects. One went in a different direction and became a computer expert. And they're definitely much smarter than me, so most of the work is done by them, and I take the credit for it. But the reason why we want to do this is definitely I had a lot to do with. This is in Rajagiriya, which is not very far from Colombo. And we have already done 3 tower buildings in the same vicinity. They're about 32 stories high, most of them. But this one went up to almost 50 stories actually now. And we also thought about doing this and try to find an investor who could invest some money into doing this, but it became impossible because the things that we are trying to do is very difficult to convince investors who are mainly interested in the maximizing the profit to get involved in something like this. I mean, I'm not saying that this is not going to make money. It's going to make a lot of money, just like anything else, but it doesn't fall into the normal calculations of an investor because it is all new. And we could not convince anybody by doing this. It is not going to cost anything extra and will almost bring the same profit as anything else, but a much better building. So we started doing this about 5-6 years ago. It took a long time. I think some of the architects who are here knows the problems that we had in getting planning approval. I think we had a lot of things which we had to explain before we got that kind of thing, because it was something that is new. We had the same problem in 1990s with Kandarama Hotel anyway. But today it has become one of the symbols of how a hotel should be done. In this, I think I'm not going to talk about architecture because even though I'm an architect, I have very little, I cannot talk about architecture because I don't know what architecture means. One thing after about 40 years of practicing it was probably. And, but technologically, we try to make an energy efficient building and also reduce the carbon footprint, which are standard phrases that have been used in this kind of thing. And in the process of I think the slides are actually measured to certain few seconds, and I can't keep up with that. It's going faster than what I say things. We have actually used many means of reducing and reusing by reusing different resources that we have. Like for instance, I think rainwater harvesting, but I think it's a wrong place to start. We are actually using the grey water recycled in the building and also collecting the rainwater that is you cannot depend on, but to a certain extent which you can collect, and recycling it to a level we have been told by the subcontractors who are doing it that give a clean water to a level of something like under 10 BOD. So it's almost like potable water, which is there. And we chlorinate it and use it for irrigating the whole building. All the trees are actually drip irrigated. And also using the same water to flush all the toilets, and which is a very large amount of water that we normally use in a residential building. And we also, the rest of the water which is actually going through toilets goes to another process of sewage treatment plant. And that water is actually cleansed up to a point where it's about under 20 BOD, which we are using at ground level irrigation, not in the building. And by doing that, we are reducing the intake from the national grid by about 40 to 45%. Not completely, but 40 to 45%.
May I invite all three presenters to the head table now? We can have 10 minutes of question time if there are questions. To sum up the three presentations, and Mr. Paul Erik Christensen, he emphasized that the tropical region that we live in have the best opportunity to go green. And then Ravihans Chandratilaka, in his presentation, he emphasized the need to change, and he suggested certain terminology, and with his through his in his imagination laboratory, he had conducted many experiments, and he cited those things and showed how practical they were. And then architect Milroy Perra talked about the tallest garden tower that he has designed, and it's I was involved in the planning committee when it was presented to the planning committee of the UDA for approval. So the three very interesting, three different presentations, and now it is time for you to seek clarifications or make comments or ask questions. For 10 minutes, I can open the floor for you. I would like to ask a question from architect Milroy Perra. Now, have you included a maintenance or envisaged the maintenance program for the building?
I think it's okay. It's on. Right. Under normal circumstances of a contract, the first year's maintenance is managed by the contractor, and most probably also with the this thing of the investor. But after 1 year, the building maintenance becomes the responsibility of the owner of the building. And in a building like this, there will be many owners. I mean, there are 164 units. They may be slightly less depending on how because two units can be joined up or whatever.
Now, when you see it from a global perspective, now you come from a very cold region, and you were emphasizing that there was potential for going green in the tropical regions. So, what would happen in the cold regions then? Will there be an opportunity for them to, because they will be consuming more energy, and what are the prospects for these people living in the cold regions?
I think that's a very interesting question, and allow me to come with my philosophy on development, because development in the world happens where you have a challenge, where life is difficult. In Northern Europe, you could say people shouldn't really live up there because it's dark half of the year, it's difficult to grow crops, but on the other hand, then people take up the challenge and they develop new things. Example of Denmark is that we have limited resources of oil and gas. We have now found in our part of the sea between Denmark and UK or England, we have found oil and gas, but it's running out. And Denmark has decided that they will develop own renewable energy sources, and energy efficiency, not to forget, so that by year 2050 we will be totally independent on fossil fuels for everything. And you can say that's a little bit against the odds, because what do we have? We have little solar energy. We have fortunately a lot of wind energy. It's always windy in Denmark, and we're using that to our advantage, obviously. We now are using, I think it's around 25% of the electricity production comes from wind in Denmark. We're going to go up to 50% in 2020. So whenever there is a challenge, And you need, for your basic survival or your basic needs, you develop things. I think the problem with the global warming challenge is not felt to be real. No, it's not happening. I don't think it'll be in my time. Because if it was really, if global warming had a direct impact on the livelihood today and tomorrow of the people in Sri Lanka.
Is there a question from the audience? Yes. Oh, yeah. Please introduce yourself in the first place. There.
Right. Hi. My name is Buddhika Gunasekara. I'm actually from a company called Eco Greenies. So I happened to see this on the newspaper about going green and all this sustainable construction and all that. So we are specializing in sustainable and eco-friendly building materials. So I happened to hear that the Green Building Council in Sri Lanka that giving the rating for the zero carbon emission buildings. So would you give for the building materials as well? This is actually going for the architect Ravi Hans, I guess.
Can you repeat your question, please?
Right, okay. So I'm aware that you are giving the zero carbon emission rating, like where you were showing in your presentation, the platinum and all that, for the green construction, right? It's for the buildings. So would you give the same, more or less the same rating for the construction materials as well?
At the moment we have started, but it's a bit tricky. Right? When it comes to materials compared to buildings, we have to safeguard ourselves. Right? We have discussed with SLSI, Sri Lanka Standard Institution even. The thing is, we are ready to give the rating for the materials based on the information given by the supplier or the manufacturer. They have to take the liability based on that, because otherwise we have a big issue. If the material is to malfunction or having whatever the emissions or something, if it is to affect the health of the people or something, we can't take that responsibility. Therefore, it should be in the producer's court. That's what.
Right. So if we were to have such reports from a research building organization in Sri Lanka and the ITI and the SLAs as well, so would you be willing to give us a sort of...
Yes, it's already started.
Right, because our material is actually renewable source as well, so there should be actually more sustainable. So I would like to come and talk to you if it's possible in the meantime.
Sure.
Right?
But this is depending on the material. For material to material, criteria is different, yes. That's
Okay.
what.
Thank you.
So over the past 2 decades, the issue of sustainability and sustainable development has become more widely recognised. Policymakers, legislators at all levels now recognise the importance and increasingly implement measures that seek to provide environmental protection, social equity, while still pursuing economic growth and stability. Energy efficiency has become a large piece of that puzzle for a number of reasons. The first reason is that energy, and in particular electricity, is directly linked to carbon emissions. If you look at the symbol we often see associated with CO2, it's the power plant cooling tower. The second reason is that energy consumption can be easily measured, which in turn means that our efforts, or the efforts of legislators, to reduce consumption can be easily measured. Thirdly, electricity is used by everybody, and therefore everyone can have a positive or negative impact. So energy efficiency can be seen as engaging because everybody can feel what's happening. The other big reason, and I guess the one that I'll be talking about a bit today, is that energy efficiency can have a positive financial impact. Energy efficiency in Australia is big business because it's good business. It makes financial sense to invest in energy efficiency projects as they have high returns. So if we move on to slide 1, we can see that electricity price modelling has energy prices rising steadily over the next 6 years. What this slide unfortunately doesn't show is that Australian electricity prices have more than doubled since 2008, and that Australian gas prices are predicted to rise more quickly due to the demand for exports from China and other rapidly growing countries across Asia. The impact of these rising prices is decreased rates of return, or payback periods, as these are often referred to. For energy efficiency projects, the prices coupled with falling prices for clean technology has seen a rapid uptake of both new building energy efficiency projects and the retrofitting and upgrading of existing buildings and industrial plant. Moving on to slide 2, I make a few points regarding the context of energy efficiency within the Australian market. As discussed, energy costs are rising. And with downward pressure on the global economy and a change to a federal government that has a less focus on carbon and more on energy efficiency, we are seeing a shift in language throughout Australia and throughout the green building industry to productivity. So we're now looking at productivity and efficiency of delivery rather than looking at reducing carbon or reducing energy for energy's sake. The other shift in language that is emerging now that we are looking at is energy efficiency has been seen more as a financial term. The carbon has disappeared from energy efficiency in terms of language in Australia, and the term and the financial perspective has been more and more prudent. So we're looking at terms such as investment barriers, or sometimes more softly, they're seen as barriers, financial barriers. So there are four main areas that these barriers fit within. They're generally financial, organizational, knowledge, and market-based factors.
I thought of to have the topic here like sustainability in teaching, research, and practice. I'm sorry about what has happened, the change in the computer. So when we were talking about this sustainability, it is very important that sustainability have to be included in every aspect of our teaching, research, and practices. As you know that we have been talking in a many way about what is going on in our environment. It was at the beginning more nature, but day by day it becoming this is what the past. And this was, we had a more nature. Before now, what has happened, it more in built environment. I'm not going to into the detail of, because from yesterday to today, everybody is talking about this situation. So this is what going on. This is where we were. Now day by day, we are going toward the direction. Then here in the morning, rather than going much into the detail, as an civil engineer, I thought of come to the special topic where rather than talking about the more on general, as a civil engineer, how I promote sustainability. So that I'll start with this one because I got the project. So I changed the project to a greener project. So I start from here because I skipped the mostly what I have been wanted to talk in at the beginning. So I was given a project as a civil engineer. I changed it to the greener project. I'll briefly explain it. I'm not even go much into detail about the sustainable engineering. Basically, we have to take care of the resources for the future generation. This is the problem. So about 2 years before, in Putlam, you see the one end you get the limestone, the other end is a factory. This is about 43 kilometers. So I was got a telephone call, and they just want to see. They have got the 5 bridges in between these 42 kilometers. They had a whole engine. It's about 80 ton. They're going to import. I mean, they have already placed the order, and the engine is coming to Sri Lanka. It is like 100 ton. So they're worried about the 5 bridges on this line. They just asked me to whether can you come and check whether these bridges are capable of carrying the additional load. Basically, it's like this one. Sorry. There's 5 bridges, so they just wanted to see whether these 5 bridges are capable of carrying this load. What I basically did was I did assessment of these bridges. I'm not going into the detail about the methodology of assessment. Basically, it comprises of the condition survey and material testing and load testing. It's like this is a condition survey because each and every member of the bridge will be inspected for their condition. And the material testing is we take sample and do the testing in the laboratory. These are some photographs of the tensile testing and the fatigue, then the material composition. Then we do the load testing and see whether, actually right now, today we are doing one bridge in close to the Navala. I inspect the site in the morning. Students are doing that bridge testing even today morning. They will finish within today. So then these are the data we will get. So this is interesting for you. This is what was my conclusion. I said the first bridge was very good condition. The second one is a very poor condition. When you even look at the bridge, you might see that the condition is not that good. The third one is a good, okay, and good. That means that basically my recommendation, you do something for the second bridge as soon as possible. So this is the bridge that was subject to a 1970s cyclone and washed off. And they have kept in the temporary location, assuming that later they can replace with either new bridge or after repairing this. But that has not been done. So that is why you can see the condition of the bridge. So this is the bridge that I was talking to replace. So this is the discussion with the management. So management wanted to go for the new bridge. I was proposing repair, basically we said the retrofitting. But I had to withdraw the idea because they are very keen on going for the new bridge. So I designed the new bridge, but at the end of the design, I presented my case. So there was several points that I presented. One was cost factor. I said that if you go for the new bridge, that costs nearly 70 million. But if you go for the retrofitting, I can guarantee the bridge, it costs like the 76 plus. As usual, money works. So what happened is that they accept the idea of the retrofitting or the repair, but they withdraw the idea of the new bridge. So then concept of the reduction of the cement, water, electricity and so forth. We reuse the bridge itself and then we recycle. We ask them to rethink about their decision. So this is where the POR work very well. Mainly target is the reuse of the material.
We know that the carbon dioxide, again, is very obvious. The carbon dioxide levels are going up. And so there are no questions about the climate change and carbon dioxide levels. I have to say that I was in Beijing and few other cities recently. And in Sri Lanka, we are very fortunate that our levels have not gone up to some other, the levels in some other cities. So we can't say that the Sri Lankan environment is still, we can say, clean. And so we can basically compete with many Western cities as a clean city. And even recently, this came from one of my friends who visited from Australia, and they were surprised about the cleanliness of Sri Lanka. So I think so we are really basically moving into a very much, different, in fact, different stage of development. And so we're very proud of it. And however, sustainability is the key for our future. So together, I think we have so I'll make some comments about how which is relevant to Sri Lanka and also to the world. Next slide. And the temperature change is quite obvious that there's a global average temperature change. And so this graph, we don't have to worry about the detail, but there's obviously a global temperature change. Next slide, please. Again, I will make sure that this presentation is available to the attendees. So I won't read each and every slide. And the next slide, I have the global warming and climate change. And it is mentioned that it's not only the average temperatures, but most of the disasters are due to the climate change. And recently, there was a disaster in Philippines. You may have all heard many lives were lost, and the Philippine government, clearly the president, in fact, was asking the world to helped them because they were particularly commenting on the climate change affecting all the nations. So it's very important that it's going just beyond how important sustainability is. It's just going beyond the poverty levels or any other economic levels. Professor Ranjit Disanak, I was listening to him, and he was mentioning them as well. The social sustainability, economic, political, all that sustainabilities. So it's quite important that we cover that. Next slide, please. So we can take some action, and again, I'm very brief here because of the limited time I have. And the sustainable green infrastructure, including buildings, is an urgent priority. And here I have listed some sustainable buildings, the electricity, agriculture sector, the transport sector, and the forest as well. So it's really much more beyond just we are talking about the buildings. And so we are, in fact, I know it's more of a Town Planners Institute could make a huge contribution to this particular area.
Yes, so since the morning you had the opportunity to listen to some very informative and interesting presentations done by especially by engineers and architects. But I'm coming from a totally different background. My background is forestry and environmental management. So in this next 20 minutes or so, I'll be talking about present trends and future opportunities exist in greening the Sri Lanka's tourism sector. Here I will be especially emphasizing the green accommodation because here we are talking about building green and living green. Right, so why tourism sector? Well, if you look at the global figures, tourism sector is one of the biggest industries, and in fact it's considered as the largest service sector industry in the world. And its contribution to the global GDP is 9%, and it also creates millions of job opportunities. According to the World Travel and Tourism Council, they predict the tourism industry to grow by 4.4% each year. So the tourism industry it's actually a growing industry. People will travel, they always have, and they always will travel. But what will determine the future of this industry is how, especially with increasing environmental concerns, how consumers will going to make their decisions, and they are changing perceptions. Right, so meanwhile, Asia has become one of the fastest growing tourism markets. So as a result, as a country, we are also benefiting from that. However, despite all these positives of mass tourism, what we call mass tourism, tourism has its own negative impacts as well. Especially, a key trend in mass tourism is a lot of people visiting few popular destinations, and this has created numerous environmental as well as socio-cultural problems. Now, talking about pressure, take a look at this one, for example. This is a world-famous beach in Brazil. Now, you might wonder why people want to go and spend their vacation in a crowded place like this, but that's the way it is. Now, if you look at our own example, Hikkaduwa Beach, it's also considered as one of the Asia's best. And despite its contribution to the local economy, we all know what sort of environmental as well as socio-cultural degradation has taken place in these areas. So coming back to the tourism sector in Sri Lanka, very quickly, especially with the conclusion of the war, our tourism sector is expanding rapidly. For instance, in 2012, the tourism sector direct and indirect contribution to the GDP was 9.1%. And Yes. Again, despite these, all these economic benefits, tourism industry in general remains as one of the largest consumers of natural resources. Especially if you look at some of the specialty items used in tourism, like glass covers, toiletries, toilet seat traps even, and souvenirs, etc. Although they seem small, if you look at the carbon footprint and water footprint that goes into these tiny products, you will realize how much resources this particular industry is consuming. Now, if you look at the energy and water consumption, it is generally estimated that tourists use about 5 times as much water and energy per day when compared to local residents in the same area. So, in our quest to achieve development goals, the government of Sri Lanka has identified tourism as a key sector to focus. These days we are all talking about moving towards green economy. So, in this background, the question remains: how are we going to change this profitable industry to respect the boundaries of environment?
Today I will going to present a rating system that we adopt for, we are adopting in Sri Lanka, which I suppose happen to be the chair of the technical committee. So I will first introduce the cause of why we need a rating tool and why we need a rating tool for Sri Lanka. And we have a beautiful world with lot of green, and in the name of development, we build cities, the pre-planned houses, roads, our planners, architects all build cities. The earlier slide that you saw was Beijing, one of the most developed cities, so-called developed cities in the world. And when I visited Beijing in last January, it was smog all over the place. The carbon dioxide levels were more than 1,000 ppm. So these carbon dioxide will trap heat, sun's heat, and will warm our atmosphere. The temperatures will cause a lot of disasters because temperatures control the climate. If when you look at the outside, if you look at, if you check the ppm levels, carbon dioxide level is around 400 ppm. We have gone beyond the uncontrollable limit. So we have to cut down. We have to cut down at least by 2050 to 500 ppm. Otherwise, the climate will be uncontrollable, and people will be facing a lot of disasters. So when you look at the forest cover, according to FAO, it's about 9.5 billion acres of trees. With respect to people, it's about 4 trees per person. So the forest cover is only on the tropical land. It's very close to the equator. When you look at the deforestation, Sri Lanka is the 4th highest in the list.
Okay, so I will talk for the next 20 minutes about lessons from the first green shopping mall in Malaysia, for which we were the green building consultants. And you will see the subtitle is Green Sense. So actually going green also makes financial sense, and that's often the drive for many of the measures that are undertaken. So first of all, this shopping mall is actually quite proud of being green. This is some screen dumps from their website, where they state that they believe in green. And they also list out the 35 green features that are actually undertaken in this shopping mall. and the mall came into operation in 2012, and then based on actual measured performance data, the mall got its green certification, both under the Malaysian one, which is called GBI, and then the Singaporean one is still pending a few measurements. So one of the highlights of this mall is that it actually saves 30% of the energy compared to normal shopping malls in Malaysia, and that translates into savings of $2 million per year in lower energy bills. And we spent about $6 million extra on going green, so that means the payback time is 3 years. So this is, of course, a great benefit to the mall owner. And the sort of benchmark figure of an energy index of 450 is established through energy audits of existing malls in Malaysia. So how to go green? The way we approach this project, like we do for all other projects, is that we work with the design team to propose various measures to go green for the particular project. So in this case, we actually came up with what we call a green shopping list of 42 items that we agreed with the consultants team that we should investigate. And then for each of those items, we can actually, through detailed computer simulations, see how it affects the energy consumption of the mall and how it affects the indoor climate. And then we also can see how much money we will save.
I'm going to question about this whole concept of environmental sustainability, because when urbanization was taking place at a rapid pace, we never considered about the environmental impact, or we never could consider about the environment. So it was overlooked. So the damage is done, and the results are now experienced. Everyone is now concerned. We have, during the last 5 or 6 years, we have seen almost every disaster that we have heard of, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. I mean, you name it, everything has been experienced during the last 10 years, and its occurrence is now becoming more and more frequent. So now it is becoming trendy to be eco-friendly. Everyone wanted to be eco-friendly. So we have green buildings, green malls, green. So you have heard of all that. Is it is only cosmetic, or are we really understood the real issues of environmental sustainability and address this, or we are trying to be a little trendy and label us as green? And especially in this era of globalization, everything boils down to rupees and cents, right? But how much seriousness are we putting into this? Is it only economic? And also this sustainability is now is seen as a kind of philanthropy or public relationship or compliance. People do it because you have to do it because it's regulatory or something like that. And the bigger corporations and companies are doing it as a kind of it's philanthropy thing. So we are doing a green building. To whom? And what's the kind of benefit? So this is the time that we should seriously think this is not a philanthropy. This is a must that everyone should do, because otherwise it's going to affect everybody. It is not a business opportunity either, because it may give a lot of money to us as designers or energy managers or whoever, but you should not consider this as a business opportunity. It's our own survival. Let's try to think again and look at this innovatively and try to promote this people resource to make things around. Thank you.